Hi, it's Ray from IELTS Focus. So in today's lesson, I'd like to look at Writing Task 1, Academic. Now the thing about Writing Task 1 is that it often gets overlooked because most people are focusing most of their efforts on Task 2, on the essays. Now of course Task 2 carries a lot more points and it's much harder than Task 1. But the thing about doing that is you could still end up on a band 6 or 6.5. because your writing is judged by task 1 and 2, so it needs to have an overall balance. So ideally you need to do a good task 1 and a good task 2 essay to get a band 7 or more. And in this lesson I'm going to look at 2 pie charts and a small table. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so pie charts with a table. So what are you going to learn in this lesson? We're going to look at 2 pie charts of a small table, the structure that's needed for this kind of task, paraphrasing the introduction, a clear overview, writing the main body paragraphs, and some notes on grammar and how to paraphrase statistics and showing approximation. Now here is the task question and the actual task itself. This is from the Cambridge IELTS 11 academic book. I advise using only official Cambridge IELTS material, or you can go on the internet and get stuff from the British Council or IELTS.org or something like that. I wouldn't use material that's from sort of like strange websites, because there's a lot of not really trustful material out there, kind of fake material. So this is from the actual Cambridge book. I've actually reproduced it in colour to make it look a bit better, So the table below shows the numbers of visitors to Ashdown Museum during the year before and after it was refurbished. The charts show the result of surveys asking visitors how satisfied they were with their visit during the same 2 periods. And you have to summarise the information, select and report on the main features and make comparisons. Now the structure needed for this kind of task. Basically it's an introduction where you simply paraphrase the question. There's no thesis statement. The introduction is quite short, maybe 2 or 3 sentences only. Then we have the overview. The overview is very general. You're just writing about the main features. You don't write any numbers or statistics or dates or any major detail. It's very general. Body paragraph 1, you write about the main features logically. Paragraph 2 is these second features logically. You have to group the data. Don't write a conclusion for IELTS academic writing task 1. And you never give your opinion. The data just needs to be written about very factually. And things like pie charts, you should compare and contrast the information. And you pick out the key features and you compare those. You've got to be very selective. Don't write about everything in the chart. So you have to be very selective about the information you're writing about. Now the first thing I have to do here is to paraphrase the question, which will be the introduction. I've highlighted the words and sentences that were paraphrased in green. There's no thesis statement, there's no opinion. Never give an opinion in this task. So you can see the original question again, and then there's the paraphrase version, the words in green. That is the actual paraphrasing. So for example, table and chart, I didn't paraphrase that. I kept those words. It's really important not to paraphrase that. You can't change that. The phrase year before, year after, I kept that. The result of the surveys, again, I kept that. And the word show, the table shows, or the charts show, I can use the word illustrates and indicates. So you can see the way I've moved the sentences around and changed the structure a little bit there. So after that, the comes the overview. In this situation, you'll just take the key information, summarize the main features, don't write any statistics, don't go into too much detail. So overall, in the year after refurbishment, visitor numbers had increased considerably, and most visitors indicate that they were much happier about their visit. Prior to the renovation, a large number of people expressed dissatisfaction with their visit. Usually the overview starts with the word overall. That's quite a common phrase to start with. So, as I say, you have to write about the key features in this situation. You don't have to write about every single statistical trend in the overview. In fact, I wouldn't put any numbers or statistics in the overview. And in this case, we're showing two time periods. There was, if you remember, the two pie charts were before and after refurbishment. This is called static data. With a graph, for example, that changes over time, that's dynamic data, where you have to explain trends and movements in a graph. But in this case, I'm just going to pick out two or three things in the data and write about them briefly. It's static data. So let's look again at the introduction and the overview. So the table illustrates the amount of people who visited Ashdown Museum in the year before and after refurbishment. Visitors were surveyed about whether they were satisfied during the visit, and the pie charts indicate the results of the surveys in the same two periods. Overall, in the year after refurbishment, visitor numbers had increased considerably, and most visitors indicate that they were much happier about the visit. Prior to the renovation, a large number of people expressed dissatisfaction with their visit. I mean, even here I can actually be a little bit more selective, and I can cut down the word count. So even that's a little bit too long. So it just goes to show that the introduction, the overview is actually quite short. So you may want to take a minute to look at the data here, the two pie charts. Let's move on to the next part, which is the main body paragraph now. Paragraph 1. So now we can write a little bit more about the detail and the statistics and the trends, or in this case it's not really trends, but it's comparing. And in this paragraph I'm going to write about the year before refurbishment. So we're grouping the data before and after. So in the year before refurbishment, visitor numbers stood at 74,000. That's less than a fifth. Sorry, less than a fifth of those were very satisfied, should I say. And then we've got this phrase, on the same note. So on the same note, which is, it's kind of like a similar kind of pattern there. In contrast is obviously contrasting, two different things going on there. So I've highlighted the past tense. Because it's static data, we're using a lot of the past tense in this case. Stood at, were, indicated, they were pleased, they showed, and accounted for. And the green colour shows how I've actually paraphrased statistics. This is something I'm going to get to a little bit later, but it's really important to vary your language here and to paraphrase the actual numbers and the statistics and or the fractions or whatever it may be. Let's look at the second body paragraph. Now in this case I'm going to look at and write about the year after refurbishment. So again, grouping the data, this is quite important. So regarding the year after, there was an extra 18,000 visitors. You may want to pause the video here now and just kind of read that a little bit. The blue colour here, this is a defining relative clause, the number of people who claim they were happy. So, you know, if you can vary the grammar, that's quite good. One thing here I've got to make a note of is that the paragraphs, they don't actually have to be this long. I would aim for around about 170 to 180 words in total for the whole task. It's 150 words minimum, and you've only got 20 minutes, so you won't be able to write a really long task, and you don't need to. This is just to show you how I'm using the grammar and paraphrasing. So now we get on to paraphrasing statistics and showing approximation. In writing task 1, especially with the charts, it's very important to be able to paraphrase fractions and percentages and approximate because you're varying your language. So for example, if we're paraphrasing percentages, so 15% would be less than a fifth, 30% is under a third, 2/5, 40%, 1 in 10, etc. Small minority is about 5%. This is an approximation. So this is a really good way to paraphrase statistics in writing task 1. And then we get on to approximation and proportion. So you can say, just over, like just over 10%, just under 10%, or less than half, more than, approximately. 70% is a large number of, so rather than saying 70%, you just say a large number of people, or a significant proportion is 80%, approximately. Small minority, that's around about 5 to 10%, and an insignificant amount, that would be about 2%. So you get the idea. So we're really varying the grammar and the vocabulary here. So let's have a look at the task again, this time with a model answer. So again, here is the task question, and here is the actual task itself, the 2 pie charts and the small table. So I would advise to pause the video here, have a good look at it, and we're going to move on now to the model answer. So as you can see, we've got the introduction, the overview, and the 2 body paragraphs, and there's no conclusion. And there's something here I must point out. I can still be actually selective here. I can still cut down the word count because it's actually, the word count's quite high, so I think it's about 200 words. I would advise aiming for around 170 words, 170 to 180, because you've only got 20 minutes to do this, so you don't want to get too obsessed with it. It is important to do a very good task 1, and it's important to do a very good task 2 to get more than a band 7. You have to have that balance in your writing, because the writing is not just about task 2, it's also about task 1. So if you can really do a good task 1 and a good task 2, you're well on your way to getting a band 7 or more. Okay, well, thanks for your time. If you need some more information about task 1 or task 2, or your writing or reading, listening, anything, go to IELTSfocus.com. There's a lot more free lessons on there. Thanks a lot.